One of the few senators talking sense on the Republican side is Texas Senator Ted Cruz. I'll be honest, Senator, I listen to your fellow Republicans. It's beyond disappointing that they are involved. We'll put their names up on the screen because this isn't going to work. Because let's say, tell me how this is going to prevent the next school shooting. Your bill with Senator Barrasso would go a long way to doing that. None of them are doing a thing to protect any kid in any school that I see.
Well, Sean, I agree with you. And tragically, we've seen the same pattern play out over and over again. Every time there is a horrific mass murder, and there have been far too many of them. I was in Uvalde the day after that horrific attack when that psychopath murdered 19 children and 2 teachers. And it is horrific. We need to stop them. But instantaneously, when there's a criminal attack, a mass murder, we have a debate in Washington, and there are 2 approaches. One approach is target the bad guys, target the criminals, target the violent felons and those with serious mental illness who try to illegally buy firearms. Prosecute them, put them in jail, get them off the street, and keep people safe. And that also includes protecting vulnerable places like schools and churches with police officers. That's an approach that works. That's an approach that makes sense. The other approach, the approach of the Democrats, is to try to take away firearms from law-abiding citizens, to try to go after the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding citizens. And that approach is unconstitutional, but it also doesn't work. It's completely ineffective in stopping violent crime. And so this particular bill that we're going to be voting on this week, I think is misguided. I think it's a mistake. You mentioned the red flag laws. Those red flag laws provide an opportunity to disarm law-abiding citizens in many states with a very low standard of proof, with little to no due process protections. And I think that is not going to prevent violent crime, but it is going to make people more vulnerable and less able to defend their homes and their families. Just today, I introduced legislation with John Barrasso. It's called the Cruz-Barrasso legislation, and it's focused on stopping violent crime. It's focused on funding prosecutors, that if you commit a violent crime with a gun, you're going to be prosecuted by the Department of Justice and sent to federal prison. If you try to illegally buy a gun, if you're a felon or fugitive and you try to illegally buy a gun, you're going to be prosecuted and sent to federal prison. And this bill provides $36 billion for funding over 10 years for police officers, armed police officers in schools. It doubles the number of police officers in schools. It provides $10 billion in funding for mental health counselors. So if you have a kid that has serious mental health issues, you stop him early before he commits the crime. This is the approach that makes sense. And critically, my legislation, Cruz-Barrasso, doesn't infringe in any way on the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding citizens. It's targeted at the bad guys, and it keeps you and me and the rest of us safe.
I hope people call their senators. We put the Republican names on the screen and let them know you don't support this legislation. So we have this January 6th committee with a predetermined outcome from the get-go, and it's the bludgeon Donald Trump. They have sworn testimony under oath that Donald Trump authorized 2 days before January 6th up to 20,000 troops be called in. Now, that's required by law. Then the jurisdiction at that point goes to Nancy Pelosi, Muriel Bowser, the mayor of D.C. The mayor of D.C., in writing, declined to call up the troops. We know 3 days before the 6th, the Capitol Police Chief, based on new intelligence, he started requesting the Guard troops to be called up, and he was denied. Why haven't they looked into why they did not take it seriously, knowing we came off a summer of 574 riots? By the way, where's the committee investigating that? Yeah. And now we know that there are direct threats. We're probably going to get a decision on Roe v. Wade this week. If we get that decision this week, there are groups that are calling for people to riot. We reported on it last night. What is Joe Biden? What are these big cities doing to protect people in light of a threat that we now know is public?
Well, let me start with where you ended, which is I think the Supreme Court the next week is going to issue its decision. I think it's going to overturn Roe versus Wade. That's the right decision.
Doesn't their session end this week?
They could do it next week. So it could be tomorrow. It could be next week. We don't know for sure when the opinion will issue, but it's soon. It's within the next few days. That's the right decision. That will return the question of abortion to the elected legislatures. That's where the Constitution left it. That's where it belongs. But I think the response is exactly what you said, which is the organized left. They're going to engage in riots. They're going to engage in violence. We're going to see a reprise, I fear, of the Black Lives Matter and the Antifa riots, where they're going to try to use political violence to advance their ends. And the Department of Justice needs to step in and stop them. I halfway expect the Attorney General to be rioting alongside them because this Department of Justice has been so politicized. Now, you mentioned in the first part of your question the January 6th so-called select committee hearings. This thing is a joke. This is not a congressional hearing. So a congressional hearing is designed to be a fact-finding mission. You have opposing sides. This is a political Democratic campaign commercial. And let me just ask you this question. What would you think if you had a criminal trial and the judge said, okay, we're only going to allow the prosecutor to speak. Only the prosecution can call witnesses. The defense doesn't get to cross-examine those witnesses. And we're only going to present one side of the story. That's what Nancy Pelosi is doing.
Well, if you want to prevent
this is a campaign commercial.
If you want to prevent it from happening again, you probably should look into the question is why they didn't call up the troops that the guy that they're claiming wanted this to happen authorized. But they don't want to talk about that. All right, Senator, we got to roll.
There is no opposing view.
Appreciate it, as always. Thanks for being with us. You'll be on our radio show tomorrow.